Hello again, everybody. As promised, this is a bonus video for the Castlevania Circle of the Moon Let's Play, where we're going to be taking a look at the Magician mode. You do this by entering Fireball into the name select screen, not the character from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. No, so this is Magician mode, and it's a very unusual mode. Your health and a few other stats are greatly reduced, in return for which you get access to all of the DSS cards from the Magic system from the very beginning, which is actually a really nice treat because some of those cards are very difficult to find in the main game. And now, by playing the game this way, you can just use all of them without having to seek them out. So, it's one of the better bonuses, I would say, that a Castlevania game has had. Oh no, we're falling. Really though, you guys should be used to this by now. We fell down this pit like 11 times in the original Let's Play. Way more than I actually needed to. Because I don't know, what can I say? I just kind of enjoy this. It's like going down a slip and slide. I'll be in the way. Oh, Hugh, if only I could show you the future. If only I could show Hugh. I always think about that when I think of people named Hugh. Probably because of watching Knives Out, where at the end, Fran goes, Hugh did this! And that becomes like a major plot point in the final solution from Benoit Blanc. This all, of course, makes tons of sense if you've never seen Knives Out, right? So let's start out with bringing back our old friend Thunderbird, who helped us beat Dracula. In fact, arguably, Thunderbird did more to beat Dracula than we did. So maybe Thunderbird deserves the credit rather than us. No, so you may have noticed, you start this game, in this version, with only 50 HP. Which, right at the start of the game, is not much at all. I think in the original game you start with like 200 HP or something like that. So this is a pretty severe downgrade. You really are like a glass cannon, a magician who's just kind of squishy, but at the same time has these amazingly powerful attacks. So be very careful playing the game this way. I would say there's a reason why this is locked behind completing the game for the first time. This is kind of a mode for experts who are able to play the game without getting hit much and can make the most advantage of take the most advantage of having access to the DSS magic abilities. So one of the annoying things about restarting this game, regardless of what you do, is that you don't have the dash yet. We are going to go ahead and get the dash before showing off the various abilities. But for now, let's just, nostalgically revisit this old area and appreciate Awake, which is one of the best opening area themes ever. It's also one of the few music tracks in this game that are original. And yet it meshes perfectly well with all the reused tracks from earlier games in the series. Like I said at the beginning of the original Let's Play, this game has one of the best soundtracks on the GBA. Which is kind of funny when you think about it, because this is one of the earliest GBA games there is. The GBA, I think, originally came out internationally in 2001. It may have been released in Japan in 2000. This game was released in 2001. It is Bleeding Edge Game Boy. Sorry, Bleeding Edge Game Boy Advance. So here we have this first save room. This is going to be our base when we start testing out the various abilities later on. You'll notice our intelligence is ludicrously high, off the charts, whereas everything else isn't. So I am going to start off just showing off the various types of elemental whips. We have the Fire Whip from using Mercurius Salamander. We did not get the Serpent card the first time we went through this game. The Serpent card comes from the Earth Demons. I think there's one other enemy that gives it to you, but it has the power of ice. So that is one of the things that can give you the ability to freeze enemies to jump up on them if you don't get the stone one. Obviously, since we didn't get the ice one, it took us a much longer time to get to that. It's worth noting if you play through this game that even though the Serpent has a pretty small drop rate, it's definitely a good idea to try to get it if you can, because that means you can start getting the power-ups with the Brain Floats really quickly. And, that helps you out earlier in the game. It would have meant, for instance, that I wouldn't have had to go back earlier, when I was midway through the underground gallery. So when you have Mercury and Manticore, you have a Poison Whip. That'll send out a Poison Cloud. This Wind Whip comes from having Mercury and, what is that one? Was it Sylph? I might have missed it. We'll see it soon. Yeah, it doesn't do much. Not particularly good. Oh, sorry. Mercury and Griffin. The Griffin, I think you can get from Hippogriffs. Not sure who else. Here's the Salamander... Sorry, the Mercury and Thunderbird, which is an Electro Whip. And then we have, finally, the Unicorn and Black Dog. So, the Unicorn, I believe, comes from Holy Armors, which are enemies you only see in a few areas of the game. Pretty hard to find. The Black Dog is even harder to find. It comes only from an enemy that is in the battle arena. So, pretty hard to find in the main game. It's nice to have this sub-game where we can just find it. And yeah, this is the Unicorn Whip. It basically heals you every time you attack, which at this low level, this is not great. We're getting 1 point of health and not doing a lot of damage. So that's the Holy Whip, and then we have this Dark Whip, which I am not 100% sure what this is doing. Presumably it just does more damage. Envelop enemies in darkness. So here we have Venus and Salamander. That should be fairly obvious. We got that very early on in the main game. It just increases your attack strength by 25%. Which is nothing to sneeze at. Just getting rid of this Earth Demon here. Not the easiest thing in the world with our low attack, but, you know, persevere. I need to get rid of this guy so he won't harass me when I'm trying to get the dash. So then we have Venus and Serpent. I decided to collect the knife, because why not? We won't be getting far enough to get any other sub-weapons. Oh, finally. I feel like I can breathe again. So, Serpent raises your defense. Fairly obvious. Venus and Mandragora. That is luck. We found that pretty early on in the main playthrough. Very useful thing, especially early on in the game when you want to be getting some potions and better armor. One nice thing about having these bomber enemies and the poison worms is that with these two different types of enemies, we'll be able to show off some of the more the stranger aspects of some of these DSS abilities. Oh, we also have bats, so those will be able to show it pretty well. I keep forgetting I don't have double jump yet, which, given how vertical Nathan's jumps are, you'd be surprised how difficult it is to get anywhere with just regular jumps. Even getting that platform right at the beginning of the game to the first save room. So now we're finally in a position to start testing these out proper. So, Venus and Golem. That is the one where it increases your defense based on your exploration of the map, which is almost nothing now. Venus and Cockatrice. Not entirely sure what that does. Yeah, and we won't be figuring it out. That's something for you to experiment with on your playthrough. I will say, some of these I do not quite figure out because you have to do lots of different weird things to figure out exactly what they do for you. Same with the Manticore. And have we figured out what this one does? Oh, obviously that's raised my intelligence by a hefty amount. I already had high intelligence to begin with. But yeah, so intelligence boost, that is Venus and Griffin. Venus and Thunderbird. That seems to increase our strength, so that is like Venus and Golem. Instead of increasing your defense based on how much of the map you've explored, this increases your strength based on how much you've explored. Unicorn is very strange. It halves your strength and doubles your defense. Black Dog is the opposite. It halves your defense and doubles your strength. Yeah, very weird. I can see why there'd be some benefits to that. And I mean, admittedly, the farther you get in the game, near the end of the game, doubling your attack would be incredible. Although, with the amount you get hit in this game, having your defense at that point would also be devastating. So yeah, that's the various Venus combinations that can increase attributes, which is kind of cool. Jupiter, you may remember, is oriented around things that sort of circle you as a passive defense. So Jupiter and Salamander, which we got a lot of use out of in the original game, just causes you to be followed around by 2 fireballs. Jupiter and Serpent causes you to be followed around by 4 little ice balls. Looks a lot like something out of Gradius. But they don't do much in terms of attacking. The 2 fireballs are really a lot more beneficial. I had to do a lot of beating up in order to kill that guy with the ice balls. So then with Mandragora, kind of difficult to tell what that does in terms of passively. I don't really figure that one out. I was thinking subweapons might show. There is at least one of the planet cards in which the various abilities that it has have to do with subweapon item crashes. Or item crushes, I forget exactly what they're called. But I don't find that out in this because each one is associated with a specific subweapon, and I only have access to one. So unfortunately, that is another thing we won't be seeing in this. I never promised this would be a 100% DSS show-off. It's just a, big-time DSS show-off. So Jupiter and Cockatrice, you can turn into stone and become invulnerable. As I've mentioned before, that doesn't really work as far as I can tell. You don't really become invulnerable. It's just random, and it makes you move slow as crap. So I've never liked that one. On the other hand, Jupiter and Manticore are incredibly useful. I only showed it off against Dracula, but this is really useful against tons of bosses that tend to fill the screen with stuff to harass you. So definitely try to find that. This one I love, Jupiter plus Griffin. It gives you basically the equivalent of... It's kind of like the screw attack from Metroid. Appropriate, since this game is a lot like Metroid. Also kind of similar to the speed boost item that you have in games like Portrait of Ruin. Although it doesn't increase your speed. So, what good is it? Jupiter and Unicorn. Let's get hit. Yeah, sorry. Jupiter and Thunderbird. My mistake. So you're sent flying every time you get damaged, which to me that's just like the game in general. But it halves the damage you receive, which is not bad at all. Jupiter and Unicorn has you surrounded by this little bubble. Turns this into a bubble boy. If only Paul Simon were here. But yeah, it constantly damages enemies around you. Honestly, not that great. There's better combinations with both Jupiter and Unicorn. And this is a weird one. In this, we're surrounded by a black hole, which looks very similar to the one that Death fell into after we beat him. And this one constantly damages you, but it will also damage enemies around you. The black dog in general is kind of like a symbol of death and the devil to a certain extent. So, in a lot of cases, the black dog thing does these dark things that may hurt you in addition to doing stuff against the enemies. So moving on from the passive bonuses of Jupiter to Mars. Mars is a really simple one. Each Mars subweapon combination, DSS combination, is just a type of sword. It changes the whip into a sword. So, obviously, Mars and Salamander is a flame sword. Mars and Serpent is an ice sword. Mars and Mandragora, a flower sword. I guess they call it a rose sword. This one I like. Mars and Golem. That turns into a giant hammer. The unfortunate thing about the hammer, though, is that other than causing a little shockwave, which does minor damage, the only way this can damage things is if the actual head of the hammer intersects them. Which to me does not make a lot of sense. Like, getting hit by the handle of a hammer would still hurt. But, that's the way DSS works. DSS is not fair. Or proud. I'm having a heck of a time trying to kill the poison worm with it. Alright, moving on. Mars and Cockatrice. That's obviously a petrifying sword. There we go. Oh, sorry. You attack with tonfers. Not tonfas, which are Japanese. These are tonfers, which I suppose must be German. It looks, though, like you're just doing kung fu against them. However, there are actual DSS combinations that let you do kung fu, so maybe I shouldn't be comparing it to that. So, Mars and Manticore, you attack with Poison Claws. Not that useful, actually. There's much better Manticore ones. Mars and Griffin, you do Kung Fu. I know Kung Fu. Show me, Nathan. In Castlevania Circle of the Moon, anything is possible. Oh, sorry, this isn't Kung Fu. I'm being stupid. This is a sword draw. The reason it looked like Kung Fu is because I wasn't charging it up, and so it just looked like Nathan swiping with his hands. Sorry, I feel terrible. I'm describing these very badly. So yeah, the sword draw can be very powerful if you hold it up for a long time. But on the other hand, given how quickly things can go south in this game if you just stay where you are, not exactly the smartest idea. So, Mars and Thunderbird, that gives us the ability to perform martial arts. Mars and Unicorn, a very strange squiggly sword we got here. It kind of looks like you're hitting enemies with a giant foam finger when you use this attack. Or like a giant cheese stick attached to a sword grip. A pommel. But they call it a holy sword. And then, of course, Black Dog. You just draw a gun. I love this combination. So the entire Mars thing has just been sword, 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 sword. And then this, Nathan pulls out a friggin' gun. And then puts it away like an Old West gunslinger. I have to wonder if that might be based on Yojimbo, which is an old Japanese movie that A Fistful of Dollars is actually based on, where it's about a sword fighter, a masterless samurai, who goes into this town and tries to destroy all of the crooks who are running it. But everyone has swords except one guy who has a gun, and he just goes around causing havoc because he can do whatever he wants. Anyway, moving on to Diana. Diana's abilities tend to just change effects from the whip, so it'll cause things to come out of your whip. With Salamander, you get a 1 fireball. Serpent, you get 3 ice balls. Mandragora is just a bunch of flower petals. Actually not a bad attack, but it's kind of silly looking. Golem, you get rocks. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Golem, you get an earthquake. Cockatrice is rocks. Because there's nothing more fearsome than putting a rock in a sling and throwing it. Although now that I think about it, that is how David beat Goliath in the Bible, so maybe I shouldn't badmouth it. The rocks also have the ability to petrify enemies, but they don't always work. Alright, next up, Manticore. This launches a poison glob. Rather Nickelodeon looking. And I don't like this attack at all. It's not nearly as good as the Manticore and... Was it the Manticore and Mercury attack, which send out a poison cloud. This one, it's just a ball. Much better here is the Griffin one, which sends out this really big attack, although that consumes a lot of magic. So you gotta be careful with that one. Then we have Thunderbird. Kinda having trouble figuring out what this is. I get hit, nothing happens. Ah, there we go. So to unlock this one, you have to spin. And you get lightning spin. It's the lightning round. Literally, because, the spinning is round. So electricity fills the air when the whip is spun. Here's the unicorn. Just sends out a weird little ghosty thing. Which is described as a shell, which is kind of weird because I don't think it explodes. And then the black dog one. This one seems a little difficult to use effectively. I don't know, it's doing alright. We've seen better, though. Having gone halfway through, we've seen now 50 different DSS combinations. Some very useful, some incredibly situational, and some of which are really just garbage. So this is Apollo. Apollo is the one that I think is item crashes, which I have forgotten how to do, so we're actually going to have a little trouble figuring out this one. Sorry, guys, this is something for you to figure out on your own. Let's just forget about that. Let us not go to Apollo. It is a silly card. Moving on to Neptune. So, Neptune is basically all about defense. When you apply Neptune with each of the elemental cards, you will find that the attacks from enemies that are the same element as the card that you have with Neptune will heal the character, but they'll lower your MP. So basically it's like you're using up MP in order to turn the attacks of it into healing. Which can be useful, but again, because it's the same thing with each element, and it's very situational, there's no way really for me to show it off here. Much better is, I've forgotten, is this, shoot, I'll see in a minute. Anyway, this series of DSS combinations allows you to summon familiars. So with Salamander, you get a bat, which is extremely cute, as it should be. Okay, so Saturn. Saturn and Salamander is a bat. Saturn and Serpent gives you a little ghosty. He's kind of adorable, to be honest. I also like him because he's a real, like, maniac. He will just wail on the enemy again and again, doing tons of little attacks. You know, killing him through attrition. Your familiar does use up magic power every single time you use him. Or, sorry, you're not using him. Every single time it decides to attack, it uses up your MP. But it's just a little bit at a time, and your MP restores pretty fast in this game. So familiars are a really nice thing to have early on. One of the best reasons for using the Magician mode, I'd say. With this one, we get an Owl, who will attack every time we attack. Which, you know, a little more controllable than the Ghost with Serpent was. So that's Saturn and Mandragora. Saturn and Golem gives us another bird, which is really weird because birds are not particularly earthy. In fact, if anything, birds are the opposite of Earth. But yeah, Saturn and Golem gives you a hawk. And here we have a Medusa head for cockatrice, appropriately enough. It's nice to have Medusa heads on your side. There's a few games that give you, through like items or spells, the ability to do that. There's a Summon Medusa spell in Portrait of Ruin, for instance, and it's always nice to have them on your side. With Manticore, we get a little poison gas cloud, kind of similar to the one you can turn into in Symphony of the Night. What can I say? I feel like the enemy designer, or the sprite designer, took the day off when they designed this guy. With Thunderbird, we get a little... Oh, sorry, this is Griffin. We get a little sprite. Pretty cute. And somewhat useful. One thing I do like is by just spinning your whip, you can get your familiar to fire over and over again, treating it kind of like a gun. So with Thunderbird, we get a bird on thunder. You know, not on fire, he's on thunder. And I love this interpretation of a Thunderbird. It's just a regular bird, like a sparrow, that is surrounded by lightning. I don't think that's what the Native Americans were thinking of when they invented the Thunderbird, but you know, whatever. With Unicorn, you get an angel, which is pretty cool. Which shoots magical arrows. This is described as a cherub. And with Black Dog, you get a little devil. So finally, Nathan can have an angel and a devil on his shoulder. One of which is telling him that Hugh is his friend and he needs to release him from the spell of Dracula. And the other of him is saying that Hugh is an asshole and he needs to murder him. I'd go with the devil, personally. Oh, sorry, an imp, not a devil. You can't call him the devil, because... because religious groups will complain. Okay, so finally we're on to summons. This is what you get with the Uranus card. With the Salamander, you get a Salamander. In fact, all of these summons are going to be named after the attribute card itself. So here's the Serpent. He's kind of cool looking. I like how elongated he is. All these summons do pretty great damage, I have to say, and are surprisingly cost-effective with magic. Next up, let's summon the Mandragora, who looks like he's seen some shit. Also, his hair kind of looks like pot. Weird stuff. I love how some of the most creative sprite work and like art design in this game is in stuff that is totally optional and that most people will not see. Here's the Golem. Comes up out of the ground to wreck some shit. The Cockatrice. Or perhaps I should call him Mega Ultra Chicken. That is one of the funniest interpretations of a cockatrice I've ever seen. It really is just a chicken with some serpenty bits on the bottom. Oh, man. The Manticore. Of course, we all know what a Manticore looks like. It's a classic beast in Persian mythology. Body of a lion, back of a scorpion. Everybody loves the Manticore. A Griffin. Another one of those hybrid beasts. You know, chimeras as they're known. Kind of hard to tell from that sprite that the bottom part of a griffin is a lion, but that's originally what it's supposed to be. A griffin is half eagle and half lion. I always love how with chimerical creatures, like, the different parts are not appropriately sized. So a half eagle, half lion, the head would be really small compared with the body, but instead they size up the head. So here's the Thunderbird. We've seen him before. A more appropriate rendering of a Thunderbird than the combination for the familiar with Saturn, which was just a bird with lightning. Let's get the unicorn in here. And of course, by unicorn, I do not mean a private company that has over $100 million in private investor funding. I mean a unicorn. Which doesn't do any damage to the enemies, it just heals you, and heals you for almost nothing. So that is actually one of the most useless DSS spells in the whole game. Get in here, Black Dog, and fix it. Oh, he's on lightning, too. So he heals you and hits the enemy for almost nothing. Boy, that sure was great. Get in here, Salamander. Show them how it's done. First card in the game. Much better than the last one. Go figure. Salamander's a pretty bomb card, all things considered. I'm glad it's the first one you get. So we finally go on to Pluto. Pluto is the weirdest of the planet cards. It causes all sorts of weird effects depending on what you equip. So with Salamander, I really don't know what it does. I don't think I find out. It might be immunity to status effects or something like that. Not 100% sure. With Serpent, I'm kind of finding it hard to tell what Pluto and Serpent is. Well, let's keep going. Well, that clearly did something, but I don't know what it is. So Mandragora actually increases the experience points you get, which can be quite useful. You might want to consider putting that on long term. A 20% gain in experience is nothing to sneeze at. This is one of the best ones. So this is with the Golem. You can just dance, right? It was a night like this 20 million years ago. I lit a cigarette and some donkeys don't to go. I don't know what the lyrics to that song actually are. Let's just fight with our doppelganger here. Yep, we get the mouse cursor involved. Open the door, get on the floor, everybody walk the dinosaur. It's a tradition in these videos. I have to be silly. Alright, so here we have it with the cockatrice. We're being surrounded by something. Presumably beneficial, defensive. Yeah, so your defense increases with this depending on how long the game has been on. Which is obviously exploitable. You could just leave the game on for a week. But, you know, then you wouldn't be playing this game for a week, and that wouldn't be fun. Why would you want that? Pluto and Manticore, I forget exactly what that does. Pluto and Griffin is really cool. Increases your speed crazy much. Definitely something I would recommend. I love anything that'll increase speed. Moving really fast is one of my favorite abilities in games. And considering how fast Nathan already dashes, speed ups in this are crazy. It also means your walking speed is, like, almost tolerable, which is good. So with Thunderbird, the damage you inflict increases depending on how much time has elapsed in the game. This is a weird one. Pluto and Unicorn. You literally become invulnerable to damage, and you cannot damage enemies. So it's like you become a ghost, and, like, the game is nothing to you. You've passed into an alternate universe. You've ascended beyond this earthly plane. Or as this puts it, the body glows with light and cannot be hit or anything. And then the best one. Pluto and Black Dog, you turn into a lil skeleton who throws these silly bones. But the interesting thing is, these bones do almost nothing. But part of the reason that this is actually a good thing is that every once in a while you'll throw out one of those huge bones and do crazy damage. What also does crazy damage is you getting hit by anything will one-hit kill you in that form. So remember that. And learning is half the battle. Good night, kids.